Now available on Tata Sky channel number 526.
Hello and welcome to Magic Bricks, now India's first property channel. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Faye D'Souza. Let's take a look at what's making headlines today.
There are decisions in the morning.
I brought it in December. Then I brought it on 15th of February.
Anyhow, for tomorrow it is. No, you will please include in the list of business tomorrow.
Thank you.
It is. We will take it up tomorrow.
Persistent lobbying by home buyers finally bears fruit. The government says it will table the real estate regulatory bill in the Rajya Sabha on Thursday. Massive disappointment for environmentalists. The National Green Tribunal gives the green signal for Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's mega cultural event on the floodplains of the Yamuna River. However, the foundation and the DDA, which gave its permission for this event, will have to pay a fine of a measly 5 crore rupees. Angry Deonar citizens get ready to take their fight to the Supreme Court as another fire breaks out in the dumping ground. Citizens are readying their petition against inaction by the civic body and the state government. Well, a glimmer of hope there for home buyers. The real estate bill will be tabled tomorrow. Home buyers across India are waiting for the real estate bill to be passed with bated breath. Now, it's been more than 3 years since RERA was first proposed. The Modi government has promised to implement this bill as soon as possible. And we've been waiting from session after session of Parliament to see this bill being passed. For you as a home buyer, it means a great deal to finally have a regulator that will monitor all of the transactions made in this industry. Today, our focus on the urban debate, and our special panel of experts will talk about what this real estate regulator will change and how it will change life for you and me as home buyers. Pankaj Kapoor is the managing director at Lysis Forest. Rajesh Krishna is the founder and CEO of Brick Eagle Group. Uday Vavekar will join us in a little bit. He's Vice President of the Consumer Court Bar Association, Maharashtra and Goa. And Ramesh Prabhu is the Chairman of the Maharashtra Societies Welfare Association. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I want to come first to Ramesh. Ramesh, you represent home buyers on this panel. And we've had, calls after calls, night after night from people who've had unhappy experiences within the real estate sector. This is a really big deal to have a regulator to look out for us, to have regulations that look out for us, which we haven't had up till now. What would this mean in terms of sentiment for you as home buyers and, as the associations that you represent?
So far, we have been fighting for this bill. In fact, we had planned for the Dharna at Delhi also. When the promise was made by Rahul Gandhi and the Congress that they will support, and we were very much hopeful that it will come up. Now, the real issue is that the developers, or for any reasons, the consumers are always taken for a ride. You pay the money, and the house. Well,
okay, I think it might be unfair to say always taken for a ride. I wouldn't allow you to paint the entire industry with one brush, but we have had, unhappy experiences or unpleasant experiences that consumers have gone through. What from the RERA bill, from the way we look at it right now, the version that's going to be tabled, in the Rajya Sabha, what do you think is the key changing factor there, or the key regulation that will be brought in?
Yeah, the first thing is that whatever the developers are going to be constructing the houses, they will get the registration done. Having done the registration, there will be certain, authenticity made. And unless until that registration is done, approvals are done, their project cannot be marketed. Today, what is happening is people are doing, I'm not saying everybody does, as you rightly pointed out. There are some unscrupulous developers who will, market this product, and the entire industry gets into issues. So therefore, one, we get the right type of the developers who will be developing the projects, and secondly, the transparency as far as booking of the flats are concerned. Now, what is happening is when we go to few of the developers, they will say that products are already sold. It is with the investors. The reality, it is not so. So if you want you particular flat, then you pay a certain amount. Third thing, we find that unless until we pay the money, the developers are not ready to show the approved plans at all.
Okay, hang on.
Everything will be on the website.
Rajesh Krishna, will this regulation actually separate men from the boys in the real estate in the real estate industry? Because this is true. There are companies who've been around for 30, 40 years, who have great track records, who know what they're doing. And there are those who actually put up 4 floors of a building in some portion of the MMR region or some portion of some city who call themselves builders. Right now, there's no qualification to become a developer. And we're talking about developers here. We're not talking about just plain builders. Someone who develops homes, buildings, townships where people live. There's no qualification right now for what is a developer and what is not a developer. Will that be the big changing factor?
You're absolutely right. So this is going to differentiate the men from the boys. If anything, it's going to create an entry barrier into the industry. We can debate if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we all agree that something like this is much required at this stage today. See, in essence, what is going to happen is the developers who have a larger balance sheet, who are well-funded, are the guys who are going to benefit most from this bill.
Right.
When I'm talking on behalf of the developers. Yeah. Which is a good thing because it definitely protects consumer interests. Yeah. But from my limited perspective, when I look at affordable housing, which is a sector that we focus on, I would argue today the only guys who are doing affordable housing are the smaller developers.
But that should change, technically. If we want the people who are buying affordable housing to have better experiences with their developers, that should change.
I totally agree. That's a wish list, and I subscribe to that view. That will work when we solve the problem of funding for these developers. Today, the whole affordable housing sector is capital starved, and you don't have institutional capital going into that segment. So until we solve that problem, I suspect this bill, if implemented in its true sense, is going to reduce supply of affordable housing.
Reduce supply of affordable housing? The bill will reduce supply of affordable housing. Pankaj, you obviously disagree.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a possibility?
If you see the crux of this bill is it talks about 3 things. One is transparency, accountability, and if these 2 things comes, then you get the efficiency in the systems. Why we are not getting affordable housing today? Because we speculated. We sold the stocks to the investor.
Right. So you're saying investors who came in and bought and sold apartments before they were actually ready to occupy drove up those prices.
Yeah, and if you look at if you see today, some of the biggest of the name is also the one who is among the defaulters list. So somewhere they were leveraged, somewhere they were lack of discipline. So what this bill is going to bring in the transparency and the discipline. You can't go forward and give deceptions that the brochure is something. There are cases where the developer launch same projects 3 times.
Right.
They
launch, they cancel.
There are cases
where people have called us and said that, I bought something, I paid the amount, now I'm being told that they're building something else altogether. They're no longer building what I bought.
And this looks very, very big thing because today real estate's one side is we are housing shortage, but then we are also supply shortage.
Right.
What happens is someone who buys the property today and he's looking at, and that's his dream house, and after 3 years you say that for whatsoever reason I'm not able to build this, take 12% or 11% of money with the interest and get out. During the period property prices have doubled. What we did with this is we robbed the right of that guy to own the property at certain period of time. He was eligible to purchase the property, now he's not eligible. Then people say that go away 10 kilometers further down or 20 kilometers further down by the property where his life cannot really interact to his daily needs. So these regulation has to come in. So accountability will certainly will bring in good amount
of helping us as customers actually tell the difference between who can actually complete the project and who
one
can't.
more thing which I want to add to it, you look at it's the biggest deceptions, which is economic deceptions happen. This is super built up area. The moment the disclosure comes, if a developer has to disclose the carpet area, he has to disclose about the bifurcation of the area and all. My own sense is that if this regulatory bill comes in, it will usher the era of sales of property on the carpet area, which the government has been talking for very long time.
Yes.
So far, it has not happened.
Yes, because, in all fairness, Pankaj, you have carpet area, you have super built-up area, you have built-up area, and now you have what developers are now calling saleable area, which is a completely different thing.
And if you look at in the time series of it, how it has really grown, there was a period of pre-2005 when the super built-up loading used to be 25%. Then it became 50%. Today it is 65%, and couple of projects which we are coming across is more than 100%.
How can it be more than 100? Who's going to buy that project?
There are cases which I am seeing that. So there is
So just to explain this to our viewers, so the difference between what you're paying for in terms of carpet, and remember carpet is the space within your walls that you can actually lay a carpet down. So that's carpet area.
Yeah.
So carpet area and the saleable area, which is all of those public spaces put together. So the lobby outside of your front door, the staircase, the lift, all of that, all of those areas, that somebody's got to buy them.
And certain areas which are imaginary areas, you cannot really count them. Frankly speaking, like no way I was able to really give a just, rational to a determinations of 65%.
Okay, I want to go back. I want to go back to that point. I'll ask all three of you, and I'll start with Rajesh. Affordability of homes. Now, this is the focus of the government, as it rightfully should be. It's likely to be the focus of the regulator as well. And I know there are viewers watching all across the country right now who just want homes to be more within reach. Do you believe that this bill will actually push homes outside of our reach even further, make homes more expensive? Why is that?
Unfortunately, that would be my conclusion.
Okay, tell us why.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, look, there is a lot of merit in the bill. I'm all for transparency, and this protects customer interests. So I think we need a real estate regulator. Okay, so I'm not arguing against it, but I'm just making the obvious point here that we have added one extra barrier to entry.
Okay.
Every time there is a barrier, there is a cost associated with it, and somebody's got to bear the cost.
But isn't this a logical barrier to add? Isn't this a logical barrier to
I totally think so. We need this barrier. All I'm saying is, if you want housing for all, we need to solve for funding for developers. Today, you don't have enough funding for affordable housing developers, and the only guys who are doing affordable housing today are the local mom and pop shops.
so are you saying that the announcements that were made in the budget for affordable housing are inadequate?
We are giving tax breaks, which is good. It's going to encourage a lot of frontline developers to look at affordable housing seriously. But then it's like asking a five-star hotel owner to start selling vada paos and run McDonald's. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
So this is my point.
Pankaj,
we have regulators. We have SEBI, we have the RBI, we have the IRDA, we have the PFRDA, we have TRI. This is examples of regulators. None of them really are helping the companies that they regulate raise funds. That's not their job. They're regulators, Rajesh.
Yeah,
that is true.
So why would the real estate regulator have part of his job put down as funding?
No, I'm not suggesting it should be there,
Rajesh, because in fact, if that transparency comes, there will be more fund. People will be more comfortable to invest. There will be there will be
more funds coming in. If there is
fund which is coming, that will start.
There will be more funds coming in if there is stability of policy.
So if there's stability, okay. So Pankaj, the other theory obviously is of investors who want to put their money. We had the whole FDI thing that happened. We actually didn't see too much being translated into money coming into the sector, because there's a fair amount of disgruntled investors who are saying it's still not as transparent as we would like it to be. Will this lead to that transparency, and as a result, will it lead to the funding problem that Rajesh is talking about?
Absolutely, and it should. And if you look at what Rajesh is saying, I disagree in that point. If you look at what happened in the past 1 decade, it happened the money came in, and since the builders were not getting the approval, they went in for buying the properties, one property, another property. They were over-leveraged. And when they were over-leveraging, they took this money and buying lands and the costly lands.
So you think bad fiscal management on the developers' part has led us to where we are today?
Bad fiscal management plus the approval delay and other things has really created problem. Plus, there is no accountability. But now with this bill, if you have to maintain 70% of the proceeds of that particular project in the escrow, and which you have to use it for the construction of that particular project, it will bring that discipline. Stop you for a second
and explain to my viewers what an escrow account is. So basically, according to this bill, there's one regulation that says when a developer starts a building or starts a project, he has to create a separate bank account specifically for this project. Now, 70% of the money that builder collects as sales when he sells you a house has to go into that escrow account and has to be used exclusively for the construction of the project in question. That money cannot be diverted to any other project. Now, here's the argument. Developers argue that it's too high because we're talking about 70% of the total cost of construction and land, which tends to be a very high amount in our big cities. Interestingly, the rules and regulations that came up from Maharashtra yesterday do not include an escrow account at all. Rajesh, we'll come back to you here. Is this what you're saying when you say escrow accounts will increase the cost of funding for us?
This is one. Essentially, this is going to tie up capital, which means developers need more capital to do these projects. And my simple argument to you is today, affordable housing sector is already capital starved. So now we need to solve for twice the amount of money to do the same amount of projects. So one, we increase the quantum of money that is required. Two, we have decreased the IRRs on these projects because capital is going to be tied up, investors are going to get paid later. And three, we have increased the perceived risk for investors. Because whenever you have instability on policy, uncertainty is perceived as high risk.
But the other argument is that if you look at there are projects delays. Why projects delays are there? Because builders diverted their funds instead of constructing the units. They went in for buying lands and they made more commitments and which they can't really fulfill. So if you look at my rising NPA, so the more capital I brought in, if we did not have the discipline, we created bigger problems. So if you look at during this period, we brought good amount of money. There was no, you can't say that we didn't have the money. We brought good money. And with this money, what happened, it went into more of a speculation spree. Builders were looking at increasing the price of the property rather than constructing. If you look at during this period, I have seen real estate in terms of supply has grown, which is committed supply, but not what is getting constructed during the period, because developers were buying the lands and launching the projects, not constructing it.
My problem here is, Pankaj, if we talk about what's being built across all of our big cities, because of the margins, because of what land costs, because of what permissions cost, a lot of the developers then wind up going into the luxury, super luxury, ultra luxury sort of bracket, when they should be catering to the 30 lakh bracket, because that's where the real demand is in blanket across all of our cities. Will this solve this problem?
It will, there is another problem, because we promoted FDI or private equity, which is costly capital. Costly capital cannot create affordable housing. And this capital is not really equities today, it's like mezzanine funding. So any developer who is taking 25% return money, if the project does not get the approval.
We could go around in circles right now, but I'm actually going to take this problem by problem.
Yeah.
And I want to know if the solutions lie in the real estate regulatory bill. First of all, the biggest problem, the most painful problem is delays. Felt across the country, specifically in the NCR region. How will RERA help delays? Actually, explain to me how RERA will help delays. And I want answers from all of our panelists. Ramesh Prabhu, I know you've taken a very close look at the bill so far.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to help?
When you are going to market the product, unless until the project is approved, so you are not going to market it. So therefore, from that angle, at least there will be a lot of pressure put on the developer and also the regulatory authority like UD, Urban Development Department or planning authorities to get it passed. So they cannot just delay it, because that is one which I am really looking at it. And once the project is approved and the sales starts taking place, I think the projects also will get completed as early as possible, because the money will not get diverted. There will be 70% money put in the escrow account. From that money also the projects can be completed. The delay can be reduced.
Okay, all right. So the escrow account, you believe the escrow account will actually help the delay. Rajesh, what's going to help the delay?
I agree. So look,
but you think the escrow account is going to make things more expensive? So
of course.
Where's the solution there?
You asked about delays.
Right.
This will, of course, I think it will bring down the delays.
The way I see that, developer will be more truthful to give a commitment, and they will, instead of saying that the project is going to be ready in 3 years' time, they'll say that it will take 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's a trend we're already seeing. New launches are claiming 5 years and not 3 years anymore.
So there are few things which is beyond their control, but nevertheless, if I have a discipline, things available, like where they have to say something that the building is going to be ready in certain period of time, and they have to abide by that commitment. And if they maintain this proceeds into a escrow and utilize for that particular project, certainly it will reduce the delay. And Faye, I would like to really mention some very important statistics for it. We have close to 3.6 billion square feet of under construction stock in India right now. If you take this in account in terms of money, it is close to 18 lakh crore rupees. And 42% is running by close to 12 months or 13 months of delay.
Right.
If you take that as a 1,500 rupees construction cost, it constitutes 1.34% of GDP. So not only the consumer, But these delays are also giving a huge impact
Okay, so I want to go back to what Rajesh said. The fact that this will be another entry barrier. The other problem in the industry is approvals. Now, if I want to finish on time, I have to make sure that my approvals as a developer come in on time. And we've heard horror stories, even from that side of the industry, of environment clearances that take 3 years, 4 years, sometimes 5 years to come through. And that, let's be honest, is also partly responsible for delays, not just bad finances on the developer's part. Now, this bill, and this has been the problem the industry has had from the beginning, it regulates the developer, but it places no sort of compulsion on the people handing out permissions to give them out on time. How much of a problem is that going to cause, Pankaj?
It's a half bridge of hope. I see that unless you solve the problem of that side, you're not really going to have a full efficiencies. And I see this like, Ramesh probably will be in the better position to answer. I think the court of law, they will also not really agree and say that, if builder stands up and says that he did not get his CC in time and that's why the project got delayed. How can the regulator
Right.
consider a developer defaulting in that case? So you have to bring the sanctioning authority under the preview of the regulatory bill, then the whole cycle will be efficient. Unless then, I see is the half bridge of hope.
I agree with you. There is a line of action that what the person who is drafting the bill or the discussion that we are doing, they want to right now do with the bill, and then the regulations will start coming in. And then all the regulators, whoever is the planning authorities, everything will be taken into account. They will be roped in. But what they are saying is everything cannot be put it in right now in the acts. So there will be a lot of regulations, rules which will be coming in. And
right, the other problem we have to talk about is the problem of unfair contracts.
Yeah.
Now, we've had various courts react to the fact that developers do not, across the country, follow a set contract format. A lot of times the contracts are drafted in favor of the developer, not necessarily in favor of the buyer. Will that problem be solved going forward? Rajesh?
I think so. I think the regulatory bill in a large way would protect customer interests. If anything, they're given sample contracts that the developer is required to sign with customers. So it is definitely more even now. And so that will go a long way in terms of protecting customer interests.
Okay. Pankaj, this is something that we have in a couple of states. Maharashtra has it through MOFA, and a couple of other states have a standard contract, which we don't have across the country right now. Yeah. And given the fact that, we have development and we have construction happening right across the country, we need a standard contract that most or all developers are, supposed to follow, at least in spirit or at least in structure. Yeah. Will RERA bring in a standard contract that I know will look after my interests as a customer?
I think so, and I see this is what is going on. So my interaction with a couple of the solicitors, they themselves says that the way the regulatory has, without this regulatory bill, the way the authorities have gone against the defaulter in the recent times, and the CCI's issue has come in and all. Developer have become a bit of a cautious. So that one-sided contract is not the one which is going by. So my own sense is the way any model draft, which certainly be very helpful for the whole industry.
Ramesh, the problem of unfair contracts that you've also dealt with, are you looking forward to having a solution when RERA comes through?
Absolutely. There are a lot of terms and conditions or the clauses which are there, and of course ultimately it is the state government will be coming out with the rules for things, and in the rules there will be definitely the draft or a model agreement to be made. And what I understand is when you have to get the approval, they have to not only put up the various flats which are getting constructed, carpet area and the amenities that they are going to give, everything will be on the website along with the model agreement, which they will be executing with the customers. And if the model agreement does not contain or it contains something against the consumers, definitely their approval also will not be granted. So therefore, there will be a lot of preventions which are being taken in advance, and whatever the mechanism they are going to do with the redressal, whether it is a regulator and then the appellate authority, I think that is with the time bound. I think it will definitely very good idea, and it will come as a standard agreement. It will be implemented.
All right, hashtag pass RERA bill. That's our theme for this evening, because we're going to push the government to pass this bill. It's a bill and a regulator that's owed to us as home buyers. It's far, far delayed already, and it's high time we have a regulator for home buyers and for the real estate sector in this country. Send out your tweets, hashtag past RERA bill, and tweet out to the Parliamentary Affairs Minister and the Urban Development Minister, Venkaiah Naidu, who responds on Twitter saying this is something we need right now. You can also reach us on the phone line that's at the bottom of your screen. Remember, this is a regulator that's overdue, a regulator that manages and regulates the real estate industry and takes a close look at contracts, takes a close look at construction, at permissions and completions on time. Now, if you have an opinion about the real estate regulator, feel free to call us. There's an email ID. There's a phone number at the bottom of your screen. You can pick up the phone and call us. But here's the thing. This is a bill that has, gone from parliament session to parliament session without being addressed. We're hoping that this week we will actually have a regulator by the end of the week that will change a lot of things. Now, we have a divided panel right now. Two of our panelists agree that it's a great move for buyers. One thinks that it will actually increase, the cost of homes. It will bring down affordability. But you'll see on your timeline, on your screen right now, there's a timeline of how long we waited for this regulator. We're starting, 4-5 years ago. There's been standing committee reports. It's gone back and forth between the Rajya Sabha and the opposition. But we're hoping that this is finally the time that we will have a regulator by the end of the week. Rajesh, let's talk about policy volatility. You talked about the fact that regulation is good provided it's stable regulation. Now, if we look at regulators across the country, and there are, there's SEBI, there's IRDA, there's PFRDA, there's the RBI. Does it give you confidence, the manner in which these regulators function, that a new regulator in real estate will give you the kind of stability you need?
See, clearly some regulators are better than others. The real estate regulator is yet to arrive, so I wouldn't pass a judgment on them yet. But it is fair to say that our town planning policies have been kind of subject to change, every other month. Which in a way is something that as an investor I would be concerned about. Right? For instance, let's say we invest in a land in the outskirts of the city for affordable housing, and all of a sudden all the green zone lands are going to get rezoned for housing development. So in a sense, I would get shortchanged. Yes, as things like this, cause uncertainty, which adds to the risk as an investor.
Right, so that's one of the problems that developers have been talking to us about, the fact that when Mumbai, for example, does not have a development plan. So a development plan tells you what portions of the city can be used for residential, what portions should be open, what portions can be commercial. We haven't had that in a while. Pankaj, we talked about the fact that people who hand out permissions should be brought under the purview of this regulator. What about people who plan cities and plan towns? Should they be regulated? Shouldn't they be regulated as well?
They should be, and it's very important. People say that the country grows because of its geography. If we don't manage our geographies well, and so then we will not be able to achieve the things. So if you look at last one decade, why we lost out the things, I just want to emphasize on that. The reason being is we didn't really manage it well. We went ahead and escalated the cost of the land with lot of investments. If you look at government itself talks about monetization of land rather than land efficiency. To some extent, I feel the urban economists, urban planners and other body has to have to be regulated. Here's the thing. Dubai, for example, has a great regulator. It has a real estate regulator. It's functioning really well, where someone building or constructing something in Dubai needs to get permission and a sign-off from the regulator. And
that is the only permission you need, and the regulator works with all of the other agencies to make sure it's cleared. I know this is a tall ask in India. But can we work somehow to move into that?
I just wanted to add one more point of it. I've been analyzing the patterns of the real estates. I have come across several such sanctions, which is probably a court sanction, which comes in, lives for a certain period of time and gets removed. So it was a case of the environmental clearances, which was like not the court sanction, but the TDR corridor came in, and which probably choked the supply of the projects for a certain period of time, and it got removed. We had the Noida bird sanctuary issues. It gets sanctions and later on gets removed. And recently we have come across that because of the BMC government says no development allowed on the open lands. What happens such kind of a sanctions? It chokes the flow of the supply in the market, and which gives a rise to the speculation in the market. So today we see efficiency coming in the system. Today we see affordability is coming in. Such kind of thing also has to be thought about. People have to look at the overall impact to the economy and the people and urban economics in that sense, how the spatial distributions of these lands happening. So if you're choking this supply, you're asking people to go farther.
So Ramesh, you've for a long time worked with people in Mulund, for example, who've been worried by the fact that their environment clearance got revoked and they waited for about 10 years to get delivery on their homes, which are still not delivered. And that's an example of the policy volatility that we're talking about. The fact that even if you have an environment clearance, you can't really be sure of that environment clearance for the rest of your life. Take the NGT order on, the homes being built at the Okhla Bird Sanctuary. Those people had their environment clearance. That was revoked at some point and they weren't allowed to occupy their homes. So that is really the bigger problem here. Now, for a lot of viewers watching, they might think it's entirely the developer's fault, but it's not always the developer's fault, is it?
Exactly.
True.
Now, what is happening is, frankly, there is so much regulators doing at a different level. We have a central regulator for certain things, maybe for registration, transfer of property act and other things. Then we have state which is having a land subject and the policies which are being done. Then there is a local authority. Then in the local authority also we have n number of departments which are handling. There is a revenue department, there is a UD, there is a other departments which are unnecessarily creating conflicting interests and conflicting things, and they are not able to coordinate. And what we really say is there should be something like RBI or SEBI or various IRDA and all. But that is all with the central government in the concurrent, it is in the central list of the regulation. What we are talking about real estate is in the concurrent list. When we are talking about concurrent list, that means the regulation will have, done by the central government and it should get percolated to the state government. State government should get it implemented. When it comes to state government, there is a local authority which are going to have a planning and various other, and even in the planning, they have got a something with the state government, central. So all this mess should be removed.
Right.
Then only things can happen.
Well, the truth is whether or not this regulator removes that mess, we don't know for sure. But let's agree on one thing. If the regulator does come in, it's a step in the right direction. And then we can begin ironing out the problems that we have in that regulator. Mahesh Narula is on the phone line from Mumbai. Mahesh, go ahead. Tell us what your question is.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I had booked a flat in the Hex group of Kharghar. They had two options. One is Hex World and one is Hex City.
Okay.
Knowing, understanding that it is the same group and they have two options, I had booked a flat in Hex World. But now in 2011, now after 5 years, in between 2 years back, there was a problem with Hex World, and suddenly they dispatched one letter. That is what the owners say, that the Hex World is separate from Hex City.
Okay.
Is owned by Harish Kanchwala, who is maybe I understand is the owner of the entire Hex group. And Hex World is having a problem where I have booked because I think the politician, maybe Chhagan Bhujbal or his nephew, under whose name the project is run on, he is having some problems, some cases going against him. So for various reasons, some corruption cases of.
So what have you been told on the home that you've booked, Mahesh?
Now when we contact Hex group, they say we are no more related to Hex World. You go and contact them, but there is nobody of Hex World sitting anywhere. There is no office. Nothing.
That company does not exist, you're saying?
Go and contact.
Okay. This is, and I'm so glad Mahesh called us, because this is an illustration of why we need a regulator. If we actually had a system where all of this was uploaded online for buyers like Mahesh to check on who is this developer, what is his, his track record, what are the other buildings that he's delivered in the past, then he'd be more careful when making a buy like this. But here's the interesting thing, Ramesh or Pankaj, when the regulator does come in and two companies like this split and go their separate ways, is there something that the regulator will do to make sure that the buyers are looked after?
Absolutely, it is there, because as we have said, there is 70% money which has to get into escrow account, and whatever money has come, that will be audited also, and the audited statements will be available. The chartered accountants will be appointed, and even the regulator can go and have the inspection. There will be certain rules and regulations done. There is going to be a regulator with whom you can complain, and then after 90 days, within 90 days, he has to give the judgment.
Right.
And again, after that, if you have to go for appeal, there is a appeal.
Okay, so in the meantime, Ramesh,
I think all these things can be taken care.
What should Mahesh do at this point without the regulator? Because we don't have a regulator right now.
Right now, I think he has to. If I doubt whether he has an agreement in place.
Do you have, Mahesh? Do you have an agreement in place when you paid the 2 lakh rupees?
The agreement is not there, but I have a proper original receipts issued by them.
So there is only a receipt which talks about booking amount, and there may not be written about which flat, where, in which building he has done. So maybe he can go to the consumer court, get the money back. That is things can happen, but beyond that, I don't think.
Mahesh, are you hoping for anything more than your money back?
Maybe the last thing is if I get my money back, that is still fine with interest for that 5 years.
Well, you're fully entitled to your money back with interest.
Correct.
What you should do is approach consumer court. In fact, Uday, here are a couple of big changes that we're going to see. One, of course, is that escrow account that we talked about. Secondly, no developer might be allowed to sell all of his inventory until the OC. 10% of the inventory is going to have to be held until after the OC is handed over, and then he's going to be allowed to sell that last 10%. So there are lots of small changes here that are going to make a huge difference to home buyers, and also the appellate tribunal that will sort of form a separate route for buyers with problems who now have to go to consumer court. What sort of a difference will this make to home buyers who have issues with the developers that they have bought with?
I would welcome this for the simple reason is at least there is a deterrent to builder or developer. Otherwise, they sell all their sellable portion and then they get away. And in Mumbai, for example, Tilak Nagar entirely do not have the OC. So all such problems, at least there will be a deterrent. It is a welcome step. Escrow account is another welcome step. And the third thing is consumer courts are absolutely welcome step. But the question is, can you refuse a civil litigation? That would be debated in the parliament. We would leave it to the wisdom of the parliamentarians, because there are many lawyers in parliament who are High Court lawyers and Supreme Court lawyers, including the various civil lawyers. So I would suggest, as the bill stands today, because I was there for recommending the select committee in the recommending team, and I think it is an absolute welcome phase. Because this will be our first phase. I only hope and keep my fingers crossed that tomorrow it reaches and gets passed. Because
it is required. Crossing our fingers that tomorrow.
Yes, but I would only add one thing here, a caution that the builder must go to the jail. Those criminal provisions of 3 years imprisonment and implementation of it through RERA.
No, but in spite of the fact that we are not bringing in people who hand out permissions, so then you might be throwing developers in jail for no reason.
Yes, but the thing is,
but that's a necessary evil,
here the question is, if you don't do the statutory compliances, then like MOFA, Maharashtra Flat Ownership Act has got deterrent in terms of criminal liabilities of sending builder to the jail. That we don't know whether it will be passed or not passed, but some deterrent and tit to bite have to be there. Without which the bill will become ineffective. Secondly, if there are contradicting provisions between the state regulatory authorities bills and the national.
Uday, I was going to ask you this, and this is what I was waiting for you to join us on the show. Now, there have been some small changes between what Maharashtra has proposed. We know Kerala as a state has already brought in a regulator, and now we'll have, hopefully, fingers crossed, very soon a regulator in the centre. Will each state be allowed to tweak the rules to suit their own state? Or will they just have to follow the rules as handed down by the centre?
Unfortunately, that is what is happening. If you look at the Maharashtra regulator, it is not, like for example, let us take the clearance of the project. The national regulator says that we will verify the title entire, there will be at least 1 month's process. Beyond that, there will be 6 months process. In Maharashtra regulator, within 1 week, you can go and sell the dreams.
Yes.
Now, how that can be
done? So basically, I register it, and you just the developer registers the project, and 1 week later, after registration, he's allowed to begin selling. He doesn't have to wait for the regulator to look through all of those papers.
Who will verify the titles of the land? Who will verify the authenticity of the builder? Where is the due diligence?
Now, coming to, I just want to say here, once the Central Act comes into place, naturally the Central Act will prevail. The State Act, states only can make rules The act will remain as. We can take an example of right to information. Earlier in 2002, right to information came in Maharashtra. That was the first state. But in 2005, when the right to information was enacted in the central, the rules were made by the respective governments. So ultimately, the rules cannot override the act. So therefore, there can be 100% uniformity. And second thing was, I want to tell you that
I differ with Ramesh for the simple reason is once it is passed, and that will be a regulatory body in state of Maharashtra. Now let me tell you, a Supreme Court judgment may be a precedent, but a National Commission judgment cannot be a precedent over the consumer for us. So the thinking about it is, unless and until the ultimate authority, even the legislation passes, if the rules are contradictory, there can be a confusion in litigation as far as interpretations are concerned.
No, which there will obviously be, Uday Bhavika, there will obviously be a new regulator, a whole new set of rules subject to interpretation in every state by every state regulator. So there's obviously going to be a certain level of chaos for the first 1 year.
Exactly, that is what I'm trying to point out. You must compulsorily introduce a national code of conduct for the entire country. Unless that happens, there will be the chaos will still continue. Advantages will be taken by developers.
The other point I think is going to help all home buyers across the country is the point of compensation. Now, there's always been this argument of if I have a delayed construction, I'm paying rent. There was one caller who called us right now on the phone who said that, I want my money with interest back because there's an opportunity loss. If you have something locked up in an apartment that you booked 3, 4, 5 years ago, even a fixed deposit would have generated higher interest return for you. So you deserve to be compensated for that loss of opportunity. The regulator will set a compensation. So there will no longer be argument about what's fair compensation and what is not and what you deserve as a buyer. Uday Bhavika, right now, it depends on what consumer court will award me, doesn't it?
You are on the dot before I could say it. Fortunately, consumer courts are open. Consumer courts are sensitive, and there are proportionate market value given to the consumer, because if I go to buy a flat at that rate, I will never get a flat now. That realization has dawned upon consumer courts, including the Supreme Court and National Commission. So I feel the avenue of consumer court would keep it open for giving the tortious liabilities and even the factual liabilities in terms of reality. That one silver line to an entire bill is there.
All right, one silver line to the entire bill. Of course, we're going to watch very closely to see what happens to that escrow account. But, Rajesh, does this give you any sense of comfort? Now, we're talking about, ironing out a bunch of things, but there's legally also going to be some confusion when the bill does come in.
Absolutely. Look, I think the crux of the issue is this, right? So far, it is true that a lot of customers have been through pain in many of these projects. Yeah? Effectively, if you cut through what's happening, developers were taking money from customers and funding their projects and future projects. I mean, it's true, a lot of projects, money from one project went to another project and developers were stretched thin, and that's part of the reasons why we have a lot of stuck projects. But what is happening, if you believe that developers had the right intentions, from a finance perspective, their equity was coming from customer accruals. So customers were taking the full equity risk of projects. And it is true, as with every equity investment, some investments go bad, and customers were taking the full risk on it, and they were not even aware that they were taking these risks. Sure. So what this regulator is going to do is ensure that developers fund their equity from equity investors, which in essence would increase the cost of the project. More importantly, the amount of funding required for projects is going to go up.
All right. The funding required for projects is going to go. You've brought that up in the past, but we're actually, if I were to look at the bill right now, purely as a home buyer, there are a couple of things that really excite me about this bill. I know that the industry is a little unhappy. I'm excited about simple things like agents. All real estate agents across the country are going to have to register themselves, which means that in order to be a real estate agent, you will have to be a registered entity with the regulator, which I think is so important because there's this entire industry of real estate agents who are just not regulated and are accountable to absolutely nobody. That will change. All developers will have to be regulated. We're going to put this up on your screen so you know what we're talking about. All transactions between buyers and promoters, commercial and residential, will be registered, will be regulated by this regulator. All sorts of permissions will be put up on the website that you and I can access if we're buying something. Here's the interesting thing. There will be a database of violators, people who are violating the rules. You'll be able to access that database as well. So you will know before you buy a home who's been in violation of any of the rules and who has not been in violation. Punishments and defaults could be, a payment penalty, or which would possibly be a portion of the project cost, and possibly jail for the developer in question. Developers' registrations could be cancelled. Buyers are entitled to refunds and compensation, the rate of which will be set by the regulator. And of course, this is the thing that bothers Uday Vavekar the most. Civil court's jurisdiction might be prohibited from taking up matters in the bill. So, Uday Vavekar, just explain it, break it down one more time for our viewers right now.
Before that, one thing is still missing is licensing of the builders and developers.
But if I have to register before any sort of construction, before any sort of sale, then technically that's an entry barrier, isn't it?
Faye, the project is registered, but developer is still not accredited and registered.
Okay.
Like stock exchange listing of shares, we were recommending very strongly a developer must be accredited and registered. Today, anybody can become a developer. You must have a background. Look at the PWD construction also. They are registered. They are class, A class, B class, C class is there. So, similarly, there had to be an authority to regulate developers by registration. That somehow is not coming. I feel some parliamentarian should bring it up for licensing of builders, because we are playing with the life of the people. Now, coming back to civil courts, your right query is, the question is, how can you close the high courts and civil courts? Because high court is a supervisory...
So one second. So right now, if I have a problem with a developer and I've bought something and I have an issue, I have to go to consumer court.
One is consumer court.
The other one is high court.
No, to regulatory authority also, no?
No. So when the regulator comes in, how does that change? Right now, my option is to go to consumer court.
Right now, you can go to...
After the regulator comes in, what will change?
After the regulator comes in, you can't go to civil court. That is what they are saying.
So does that rule
civil
out...
court includes high court.
Civil court includes high court.
Yes.
So the regulator will set up an appellate tribunal, which is sort of a court inside of the regulator.
So there will be a parallel court of regulator and consumer court. Now, both these courts are central courts. Right. The state courts are not there. The high court, civil courts are state courts.
If I'm unhappy with the ruling from that court, what is my next line of appeal?
The next line of appeal is like, say, consumer court. You go to a forum, state commission, national commission, and Supreme Court. Okay. Similarly, in a regulatory, there will be an appellate court, and then from appellate court to Supreme Court again.
All right. So that will change drastically. Also, we are hoping that the appellate courts will have the ability to handle the floodgates.
And my little worry is consumer courts are yet not equipped infrastructure-wise as city civil courts and high courts are.
Right. So a brand new court being created will need to be equipped to handle the flood of complaints that it will receive from the real estate regulator, and they will have to have judges there who have a keen understanding of this sector. Rajesh, that point that we keep coming back to, which registration of or accreditation of developers. If we do that, if what Uday Vavekar suggests, which is create another layer of accreditation, is that another entry barrier for you to worry about?
I would actually support that. If anything, with or without a regulator, I think you should have a name and shame list online. It's just part of transparency. It's, I think, perfectly all right to publish developers' track record online for customers to see.
What we are saying is, suppose you want to start a bank, there is some entry point. You want to do something. So there is something minimum which criteria has to be. Maybe you can say that he should have owning the land, or he should be owning, having so much money into account. Something when you want to start even a private limited company, you have to have at least 1 lakh rupees as a paid up capital, something like that.
But and I'm just arguing here, I'm arguing for the other side. If the developer has set up a company, and if he's got a commencement certificate or an IOD to begin construction, then obviously somebody has checked the titling of the land. Or are we questioning the fact that these permissions are being handed out? Pankaj Kapoor, are these permissions being handed out without properly checking titling of land?
We can't
that we need one more entry barrier?
I don't think so. We need to do it several points. And, basic purpose of it is to bring in a database, and that database removes the redundancies of doing the things again and again. So it's like that if IOD is done, And you look at today also, like, it is said that if the HDFC Limited or some of the big institution is giving or lending to the projects, other banks come forward and says that, okay, well, they must have checked everything, and so let's go forward and do the lending. So this is how it will happen. So if you look at, we need to trust somewhere. We can't really continue to be sitting down and say that keep questioning. And once the repository is available to the world and they are seeing that, then it is going to really bring good amount of efficiency. So I don't think
not
so.
really taken well.
Yes,
My point is very clear that a developer himself must be registered, whether it is company, partnership firm or a proprietorship, for the simple reason is he must have proper knowledge of the development, background of the development, and he should have proper capital and due diligence in terms of the projects that he is doing. You are playing with the life of the people.
Yes.
Like listing of the shares of the companies, if the company defaults, you are delisted.
Right.
Even in PWD, the developers are accredited, contractors are accredited. Where is an accreditation and background and study of the developer?
All right. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but this is the thing. We might have a regulator before the end of the week. One hopes before the end of the day tomorrow. So we're going to keep a close eye on it on this channel. This could be the biggest piece of information we receive as home buyers. It will change everything. It will change the way we buy homes. It will change every part of that transaction, and hopefully over a period of time make it simpler and easier to buy homes in this country. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us, and of course we will come back to you as and when that real estate regulator is cleared in Parliament. If you have a question about how the regulator will affect your life, watch this channel, and of course you can get in touch with us on the contact details that are on your screen right now. Stay with Magic Bricks now for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/magicbricksnow. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Bricks Now. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/Magic Bricks Now.